As the CCP virus spreads around the world, people are blaming one man. Well, yes, but also this man, the head of the World Health Organization, and they want him to step down. Welcome back to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. As you know, the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, covered up the coronavirus in the critical early weeks when it could have been stopped. They did it to protect themselves politically. But the CCP's cover-up was monumentally stupid because it led to a disaster in China and now the rest of the world. That's why I call the coronavirus the CCP virus. But it wasn't the CCP alone. They had a friend helping them along the way, the World Health Organization, and more specifically, the WHO's leader, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, this guy. And people are now calling on Dr. Tedros to resign. Side note, Dr. Tedros is not actually a medical doctor. He has a PhD in community health. Anyway, he's an Ethiopian national, and with his community health degree, he ended up working as Ethiopia's Minister of Health for 7 years and then as Minister of Foreign Affairs for 4 years before being elected as the new Director General of the World Health Organization. Now, working as a national health minister may sound like a good resume item for the next WHO director. But you know what's not? A legacy of covering up epidemics. This article from 2017 says Tedros, while Minister of Health in Ethiopia, may have covered up not one, but 3 cholera outbreaks. Outbreaks occurring in 2006, 2009, and 2011, he said, were only acute watery diarrhea. Now, it just so happens that cholera is a contagious disease that causes severe watery diarrhea, and it can kill people if it goes untreated. But hey, that's just watery diarrhea under the bridge. I mean, if Tedros is experienced at cover-ups, it makes sense why the Chinese Communist Party was so eager to have him lead the WHO. During Tedros' campaign for the WHO position, he was invited to speak at Peking University. Peking University is like the Harvard of China, but with less academic freedom, and more Asians. Tedros soon got elected as the WHO's Director General and assumed office in June 2017. And according to state-run China Daily, his very first bilateral meeting as the new head of the WHO was in China, with China's Minister of Health. Tedros used that meeting to reiterate the One China principle and to assure Chinese leaders that the WHO would properly handle the Taiwan-related issues based on the resolutions of the UN General Assembly. Properly handling Taiwan-related issues means pretending the country of Taiwan doesn't exist. And after visiting China again in August 2017, Tedros tweeted this, back from a successful visit to China, signed agreement with Minister Li Bin to increase China's voluntary contribution to the WHO by 50%. Back in 2017, China's voluntary contribution to the WHO was around $10 million. The United States' voluntary contribution that year was more than $400 million. Anyway, fast forward. By December 31st, 2019, Taiwan was already alerting the WHO that the new coronavirus was seeing human-to-human transmission. But since the WHO pretends that Taiwan doesn't exist, they ignored it. And as the weeks went by, Dr. Tedros, who is supposed to be the guy in charge of an organization that helps predict and stop global epidemics, ended up becoming the guy in charge of the global epidemic cover-up, thanks to his awkwardly close relationship with the Chinese Communist Party. That photo was taken on January 28th. They really should have been social distancing. Here's a Chinese state-run TV report about that January 28th meeting, which was more than a week after everyone already knew the outbreak in China was deadly serious.
The head of the World Health Organization says he is confident in China's epidemic prevention and control ability. Dr. Tedros Adhanom met Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Beijing today. He said the WHO and the international community recognise the decisive actions taken by the Chinese government to curb the spread of the new coronavirus, and he called on the international community to remain calm and not to overreact.
Good thing Tedros followed the Communist Party line and told the international community not to overreact. Like how in early February, he told countries that travel bans were not needed. And in mid-March, as the Chinese authorities continued to cover up how bad things were getting, even after 2 months of lockdown, Tedros tweeted his support for China, reporting no new cases. Now, I'm not saying Tedros is cozying up to the Chinese regime or his incompetence, or both, are the main reasons the CCP virus is now killing tens of thousands of people across the globe. It was ultimately the CCP's cover-up that caused it. But Tedros and the WHO absolutely played along. U.S. Senator Martha McSally, who's on the Senate Intelligence Committee, tweeted last Friday that Dr. Tedros deceived the world. At one point, he even praised China's transparency during its coronavirus response efforts, despite a mountain of evidence showing the regime concealed the severity of the outbreak. This deception cost lives. And a lot of Americans, while quarantining in their homes, are now calling on Tedros to resign from the WHO. There's also this petition on change.org calling for his resignation. It has more than 700,000 signatures. That's a lot of signatures. That puts it somewhere between this petition for a meatless option at McDonald's and this petition to make Kobe Bryant the new NBA logo. But suffice it to say, a lot of people want Tedros to step down. If he does step down, will that fix the WHO? Not necessarily. This is the previous Director General of the WHO, Margaret Chan. Before joining the WHO, she was the Director of Health in Hong Kong. In 2003, after Chan had been in that position for 9 years, Hong Kong was still ill-prepared for the SARS epidemic. SARS killed more people in Hong Kong than any other Chinese city. Good track record so far. And in 2015, after she had been leading the WHO for nearly a decade, an independent report showed that the WHO was incapable of reacting to international health crises such as Ebola. The report said the WHO lacked the capacity and internal culture to mount an effective response to an epidemic. Now that's incredible. If the WHO lacked the capacity, that could be fixed with more money. But if your internal culture sucks and your leadership is bad, there's nothing you can do. But the important thing is, even though the WHO was unprepared for epidemics, under Margaret Chan's leadership, the WHO was prepared to deal with Taiwan, or as this confidential WHO memo required everyone to call it, the Taiwan province of China. But the WHO wasn't just required to refer to Taiwan as a province of China. According to this memo, if any WHO units wanted to use any documents or information from Taiwan publicly, they were required to clear it first with the Chinese permanent mission to the UN in Geneva. So good job, Margaret Chan. And guess what she's doing now after her successful stints in Hong Kong and the WHO? She's a member of the Chinese government's advisory body, the CPPCC. So the World Health Organization has had issues for a long time, not just under Tedros. Japan's deputy prime minister recently said the World Health Organization should be renamed the China Health Organization. Good one. Although while the WHO has done a lot for the Chinese government, it hasn't done much for the health of the Chinese people. So the WHO has lost international credibility by repeating the Chinese Communist Party's coronavirus propaganda. But China's influence at the UN goes beyond the WHO. For years, they have been expanding their control in the UN overall, which explains how China just got appointed to a UN human rights panel where they will now play a central role in picking at least 17 human rights investigators, including those looking at freedom of speech, enforced disappearance, and arbitrary detention. What could go wrong? Maybe I should make an episode about that. And next, it's time for me to answer a question from a fan who supports China Uncensored through the crowdfunding website Patreon. Hedge Hodge asks, are other countries besides the U.S. calling out China for mishandling and lying about the Wuhan virus? Well, good question. Unfortunately, not a lot of countries besides the U.S. are calling out the Chinese regime yet, except the UK, where Prime Minister Boris Johnson is furious at China over their cover-up. Possibly also because Boris Johnson himself tested positive for the coronavirus and is now in the ICU. So, what can be done? Well, you can share China Uncensored episodes with everyone you know, and tell them to start using the term CCP virus to make clear who the real culprit is. Thanks for your question, Hedge Hodge, and thank you for watching. Contribute to China Uncensored by going to patreon.com/China Uncensored. Your support helps us keep making episodes like this that usually get demonetized by YouTube. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.